The podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you with the cooperation of the SJ Network. If you're a person who needs a publicist and you want to appear on podcasts, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Season 9 premiere of Too Many Podcasts. Today, Jim the podcast Sherpa speaks with Dax and his father Kai of the YouTube show What's Under the Ed. Henry, do you know what's under the bed?
Of course. There are two mismatched slippers, a Playboy from 1993, 48 cents and change, and some leftover pizza from Super Bowl 51.
Actually, I was referring to the horror podcast.
Oh, trust me. If you smell that under the bed, it's a horror.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. We would like to give you a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial simply by heading to www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles of audiobooks and podcasts, including this one, to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now, the one and only Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, you can get some of the Sherpa's jokes for free at the gift shop. So take as many as you like. We're begging you.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, rebels of the Sherpalution. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Oh, wait a minute. It's not? Oh, okay. Oh, well, being that you're here, well, welcome to the Season 9 premiere of Too Many Podcasts. I'm so glad to have you here. I am Jim, the podcast Sherpa, your Sherpa, leading you through this mountain of podcasts as I've done for the past 8 seasons. What? You've missed the first 8 seasons and you've just started listening now? Hey, well, that's okay because you've got all the shows right here on your favorite podcast app or on Sherpalution.com. Who could ask for anything more than that? I know what we could ask for. Our guests today.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
His name is Dax. He is 14, going on 15. He hosts a YouTube show called What's Under the Bed with Dax. And not only did I get to talk to Dax, I got to talk to his dad, Kai. And there's an interesting relationship with these guys. Kai has been in the movie business for a while, and he got to share his love for movies with Dax ever since he was a baby. So it's definitely been something that they've shared over the years, and they've worked together on the YouTube show. So let's have a listen to my conversation with Kai and Dax of What's Under the Bed with Dax. Hello, Rebels. We are here in the horror room of the Sherpa Chalet, and my guests today have a YouTube channel called What's Under the Bed, which is not a cleaning podcast that I've done with my mother. This is horror at its very best. They're coming to us from Atlanta, Georgia. Dax and Kai. Welcome to the
Hi. Hello.
A chalet, huh? Okay. I thought it was more of a bungalow. I'm slow to the party. You're right. That's Sherpa show. I got it now.
That's okay. Now you guys are father and son, so we should explain that to people.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm the son, but
they're only listening.
But yeah.
If your listeners could see me, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Squeakier voice equals child. Yeah.
So that's Dax. I'm his father, Kai.
Okay. Now, Dax, you are 14?
Yes, right? I am.
Okay.
I will be actually turning 15 this year.
So 14 and a half.
Yeah, 14 and a half.
Right. He's past that critical half mark.
Yeah.
We're still doing the half stuff. Well,
you notice how important that is when you're younger, but when you get older, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm somewhere in my... one of those deals. So, all right. So obviously being a horror did the both of you, was that something that you kind of bonded on, like a father-son thing?
Well, yes and no. We bond a lot with just movies in general. We're very huge movie people. My dad actually works in the business, and I want to work in the business.
Okay.
So we kind of bond over movies, but we ended up wanting to watch horror movies later on. One of my first horror movies was the Blob, which I did not watch the full thing until much later because I got too terrified at the beginning.
Now, did you see the original or the remake?
It was the original
With Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Now, didn't they use like Jell-O or something like that for the
jam? It was jam, strawberry jam.
Oh, that's right.
Strawberry jam to go through the movie theater.
Yeah, and it was
cool.
It was the scene. It was right at the beginning. It was the scene where the Blob leaps on the stick from the stick onto the homeless guy's hand.
And I just screamed and said, "Turn it off!"
And I couldn't get him to watch that show again for years.
Yeah, it was like 10 years later, and then I was like, finally. Okay, fine.
We're playing the theme. I don't know if you remember the theme to it. It's like some little kind of funny.
Beware of the increase.
Yeah. I swear to them, like any movie with a theme like this, it's okay. It's not scary.
I was like, never.
So the fear factor got a little bit better as time went on, I'm presuming, if you're still stuck on horror.
Yeah, he was watching Jaws and things like that.
Yeah.
Exorcist, Texas, but he couldn't go back to the Blob for a while.
No, I couldn't go back to the Blob.
You eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I'm guessing either.
We finally got it done.
Yeah, we finally did. Sorry.
No, okay.
The first movie I finished. I didn't watch the beginning because Dad wouldn't let me. But it was Jaws. I finished Jaws. We watched middle to the end, after in a good part where it wasn't too scary for a 5-year-old child.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally finished it, and Dad tells the story a lot. But I tell him to pause it, and it's like the shark's up there, and I tell him to pause it, and I say, "That's not real, right?" And he just got so proud and showed me pictures of Bruce, and it was apparently based on what he said, one of the proudest moments of his life.
That and catching him walking into a room one day, catching him listening to vinyl of David Bowie reading the liner notes. Those are the two proud parent moments.
Oh, what about me asking for a cassette tape?
Oh yeah, that's his new thing. He asked me the other day to. It's this big thing. I need to get something, Dad, which means I got to spend money, and he wants to get a cassette player so he can do a mixtape.
Okay.
Now, so he thinks that's some kind of crazy novel thing from the Dark Ages. I'm just a mixtape, really. I can fully support that. But
did you tell him that the most important thing that you have to keep in mind with cassettes is that you have to have a pencil handy?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I got the original idea because one of my friends who I'm pretty close with just recently got back with being close with had a cassette player. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." She carries around a pencil everywhere because of the thing.
At some point, that tape is going to get stuck in those gears, and you're just going to be like,
the good old days. And you'll know what kind of hell I had to go through growing up.
Now, Kai, you say you work in the motion picture business. What do you do?
I'm a location manager, so I find the locations to film at, and then kind of act as the liaison between the production and the real world, so that we can get what we need in the can without destroying everywhere we go.
Okay.
Kind of the gist of it.
Were there any recent movies that people might know that you scouted out locations for?
What's the big one?
I, Tonya came.
I,
Tonya. It's not recent, but Halloween 2 Rob Zombie was one of his.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Coming to America.
Coming to America, the second one, not the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a 21 Jump Street.
21 Jump Street.
A show called Red. I'm trying to name the ones that people might know. Just finished Emmett Till Story, which isn't out yet, but that'll be a big one next year.
because I know that a lot more filming is being done down in the South, because a lot of the actors that I interviewed too, they're like, everything's opening up down here.
Yeah, Atlanta's where they make movies now. And with the COVID lockdown and all that stuff, we were one of the first places that opened up again. So it's just been so busy. It's always been a little busy, but it's kind of crazy right now. Of course, they do all the Marvel movies here for the last 10 years.
They do Walking Dead. They used to do Walking Dead. Now it just ended. But they do Walking Dead down in Sonoya, which we live practically really close to. So,
yeah, we're pretty close to that. I always thought if we lived, this is kind of south side of the city, if we lived down here, I'd surely get on one of the shows at the studios down here, but no, nothing. I commute every day for an hour at least. I can never get a job close to home, but Walking Dead and all those things filmed down here. Creep Show, I think, as well.
Creep Show.
Do you go with your dad a lot, Dax?
Not as much recently because of COVID, but like I have. There's most of the sets that I was alive for. I've been on all of them.
Okay,
except for like the past 3 years because of obviously COVID.
Yeah,
but
he was on every set since he was alive. We got a picture of him as a baby on Halloween too. Probably terribly inappropriate there nonetheless.
Yeah, that's something to pass around on a Christmas card around the holidays, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think probably with that photograph, I think your fate is kind of sealed.
Yeah.
You can't really kind of go back from that.
Yeah,
now it's interesting that you guys were saying, you're talking about The Blob being the first movie that you saw. Kai, what was like the first horror movie that you got hooked on?
I grew up in the 80s when, I remember when cable wasn't 24 hours quite yet. I was pretty young, but it happened. So I don't know. I was just a kid, the latchkey kid who would stay up till 4 a.m. watching whatever was on Showtime or HBO. Mm-hmm. And so I'd see all the weird stuff, what does it say? Back then it was all the slasher films, Omen, you get the weird like evil speak. And, but the trifecta for me over the years is, Exorcist, Texas Chainsaw,
and Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, yeah. But the ones that affected me the most, probably Friday the 13th. I remember vividly. My brother's girlfriend took me and her brother, we were like 8, to go see a double feature, Friday the 13th, 1 and 2, probably when 2 was released at a drive-in. And for a year, anytime I went into a room, I'd have to push the door all the way to the wall in case somebody was hiding behind it or something. And it got so normal and routine for me. I just go in and I would just do it naturally. And there was one day I came home from school, put my books down, went into the bathroom, pushed the door, and it stopped. And, my heart just dropped, and it for a half hour, scared to death in the kitchen. I come back in with a little kitchen knife and all that. It turns out to be my brother's shoes behind the door. So it had an effect.
To say the least.
To say the least. Yeah.
Now, between classic horror and the contemporary stuff, what are your feelings on like the difference? There seems to be like a division at a certain point where the gore plays a heavier role in the horror than just scaring the hell out of people.
So really quickly, I'm going to say this. I'm fine with gore. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not the biggest fan of gore. It's not like my favorite ever thing. Like I don't like torture porn or any of that stuff. But I can appreciate some good gore. Though I do not tend to gravitate towards it.
Okay.
I do like the less gore stuff. Bloody is fine. I'm good with blood. Blood's fine. Just when someone's getting brutally mutilated, I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's fun, but
I never found gore scary. It's fine. Same thing. I never got into the, I don't know, like Hostel and stuff like that. It doesn't bother me, but it's a little over the top for my taste. But a lot of the older movies that I remember that I've shown Dax is they're not that scary anymore compared to what we have now.
No, don't get us wrong. Some can be very scary still. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the good examples of it.
Yeah,
but
the way it works. So I don't really censor with Dax, but I don't just let him go off and watch anything on his own or something like that. Like
I'm not a modern day latchkey kid.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm lucky to be alive. I try to give up some guardrails for him. You know, when we watch stuff, there's some things that, you know, like Last House on the Left is pretty graphic and horrible and terrible. Like, it's a great movie, it's an important film and all that, but he doesn't need to watch that. There's no campiness or good time there. That's just kind of, you know, real horror. So we kind of skip over that kind of stuff. But you know, Halloween and Texas Chainsaw and all that. We have a deal when we watch it. If it starts getting too intense, he tells me and we'll stop it. And it breaks the pacing and all that. And Texas Chainsaw is a good example. Mm-hmm. You know, Leatherface has chased her out of the house. She goes into the gas station. The door's wide open. The guy says he's going to go check, and we're just sitting there. It's quiet. And he said he's got to stop it. And there's such intensity in that moment. But while we're just waiting, we start talking about the directing part of it. You know, like Toby Hooper is the director, and this isn't by accident. He's doing this on purpose, and he's kind of twisting the tension until finally you had to stop. And we just start talking about how the techniques involved and all that, and then it just starts, you know, kind of de-escalating. De-escalates the whole thing. We've broken it up with the pacing, and we kind of tackled them. And that's kind of the way it was with that original Jaws thing. We watched the end. I didn't show the beginning and just the chase sequence, and he just figured it out. Like, that's a fake shark. Like, yes, and let's talk about it. Yeah, it doesn't always work. It's strange. I just know that kind of what he can take or not. He has a list of movies he can watch without me, and a handful that we got to watch together. Yeah,
he's given me a list, and it's like maybe like 20 movies, and he put a little asterisk next to the ones that he wants to watch with me. But the other ones, I'm perfectly fine with watching on my own.
So much your mother tried to show you zombies.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is a funny story. So one night I was like, screw it, I'm gonna watch Zombieland. It was free on Netflix. I was fine with it. I was gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna watch Zombieland. I watched it. My mom and a couple other people who lived with me joined in. We finished watching it. Then we made the grave mistake of then watching A Dog's Purpose, which, if you don't know what that movie is dogs plus death equals lots of sad. And it's like 20 dogs plus death.
Yeah, 20 dogs dying.
Yeah, and I'm a very huge dog person. I love dogs to death. But that night, I started getting really bad night terrors. And I mean, I will.
Zombies eating dogs.
Yeah, it's the the painting with the dogs playing poker.
Yeah,
it's that.
So
and it's them playing poker, and then all the walls get torn down by zombies, blood, gore, all the dogs dead, blah, blah, all that. And I'm a dog person, and I was like 12 years old. So I was like, okay. And I kept my mom up like that entire night. And to this day, I cannot watch zombie movies without getting that.
Yeah, we struggle through the zombie movies. His mom calls me saying, I don't understand what happened. I showed him Zombieland. And I'm like, oh, no, you can't show him that. She's like, what are you talking about? You show him everything. I'm like, oh, not Zombieland. So I don't think she likes to.
Right, so mom likes horror too now.
No, quite the opposite. She hates horror. Well, okay. She likes horror. She doesn't hate it, but she doesn't love it like me and Dad do.
Okay.
She's there in the background.
Yeah, she wears her emotions on her sleeve a bit. She used to laugh at like a Marmaduke cartoon, like out loud. Mm-hmm. So when she started seeing horror stuff, I mean, I remember watching Jaws with her a long time ago. She just when the shark comes up and eats Quint. Spoilers. Just climbed right up on the back of the couch.
it's like how old is that movie? I forgot how old that movie is.
Old.
But yeah, it's 50-year-old movie. If you haven't seen it, you're getting spoilers. It's 50 years old. Just watch it.
It's on you.
Yeah, it's on you.
Yeah, I take issue with that with people who criticize you if they, well, yeah, you give a spoiler away from a movie that's 80 years old. Come on. Wizard of Oz? What do you mean she gets back home? It's like, stop it. With the wind, the South loses. Well, we'd like to take a second to apologize to anyone who's listening who hasn't seen these movies. And we got to do that for a disclaimer. I guess that's the safest way to do it. Now, do you have, are there other siblings in the house that
just him?
I'm an only child.
Okay.
My mother has a boyfriend who has kids, and I live with them.
Okay.
That's just the situation.
I got it. Okay. So do they get crazy about horror movies too, or does we rule that mom doesn't like them?
One of them absolutely loves the really gross stuff like Human Centipede and the Saw movies that aren't Saw 1 and 2.
Okay.
Which are just the torture porn.
For 1 and 2.
But yeah, that's the kind she likes. And then the other one's really young, so.
Just for the record, I don't want you watching Human Centipede.
I don't plan on watching it.
Watch that later.
But yeah, I'm more of the in-depth horror fan. I mean, I like Cabin in the Woods, and that's not a great example, but I love the Halloween franchise. The Friday the 13th franchise is one of my favorites. It was one of the first franchises that I really got into. For the first time, I was a little older than when I first watched horror movies, but it was the one that really got me into horror. Okay. And I enjoy that. I enjoy it for that. And the ones that I just mentioned are really classics. They're known for everyone. Everybody's heard the name Jason Voorhees and Friday the 13th.
Sure.
Though it's surprising to me that nobody knows who Pamela Voorhees is.
The spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers again. I'm so sorry.
You say Jason, don't ruin the first year.
But yeah, I just love horror. It's not something that I can not say. I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it probably ultimately stems from I couldn't watch another Disney movie again. I don't even think it was Disney. He was stuck on Bolt.
Yeah,
I watched Bolt,
which is Pixar,
100 times, and then finally it's okay, let's introduce you to horror.
Let's ratchet this up a little bit.
Yeah, we did all the Universal monsters. He doesn't. He's too young for that, but he was watching Universal monsters before. He can't remember it.
Viewers who
Jaws may be the first one he remembered.
Because this is audio, the viewers don't know, but I had if you check out my channel, the Creature of the Black Lagoon is the thing that holds up my microphone. Technically holds up in air quotes my microphone, and that's one of my favorite Universal monsters too.
I wonder what you guys think about the classic Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi type stuff. You're fine with that, right? Yeah,
I'm fine with that. I love those. The Universal monsters are horror. That's the first horrors.
He responded well to Creature from Black Lagoon, certainly, but remember Wolfman was one. That was one where I had to shut it off. In the last 5 minutes, we had to stop it because it was getting too tense for him, to show you the age he was. Which is great. That's why I wanted to show it to him early so that the movies would still work,
The movies still work, just some movies don't anymore.
Yeah. I honestly, if you go back and we kind of grew up, or I kind of grew up watching them all the time, whatever came along. But if you go back with the hindsight of which ones were the the good ones and worked. And as I started showing Dax, they're actually really good. And when you put them all together, kind of the best of the best, I mean, they're just such interesting stories, so different one from the next. I know we have a sea of slashers and stuff like that, but when you're just touching on the highlights, like Friday the 13th, like Halloween, like, you know, My Bloody Valentine, things like that, they're so different still that it's hard not to like, honestly.
So your passion for horror, I mean, for the both of you is pretty obvious. What gave you the idea to do a podcast about it?
May I tell this story? So what happened was COVID lockdown happened, and we got really bored. So my dad was like, "Hey, I have some connections to horror people. Why don't we just get a bunch of get them to sign pictures, like sign stuff for you?" And I was like, "Awesome, that's great." And he started contacting the people, and at one point him and my grandmother, who lives with us, were watching Kane Hodder's documentary. Kane Hodder was Jason Voorhees from Friday 7th to X. And I really connected with his story. And he, long and short of it, he was bullied at a young age. I was bullied at a young age. That's the best I can explain. But I really connected with him, and I was like, I want to talk with that guy. And my dad was like, well, we can't just talk with him. We got to find a reason. So we decided, how about we do interviews? We'll do 5 interviews, and we talked with him at a thing called GalaxyCon, where you can talk with famous people for 2 minutes online. And we asked him, hey, can I interview you at some point? And he said, get 5 interviews down and we'll talk. And I have just done how many have we done so far?
We'll do 6 and 7 this week. 6 and
7 this week, which really excited about. Honestly, I can spoiler it because this is going to happen in like June or July. We're interviewing Joe Dante this week.
Nice.
I'm so excited for. Yeah, Gremlins, Howling, Piranha, huge movies. The Burbs, like pretty big movies.
Very excited about it.
I'm very excited. And then we're also interviewing Brian Whitten, who did Dark City and he did one of the Creepshow guys. Final Destination, and I'm blanking out on the rest. But he's pretty big too.
Do your research.
No, I've done my research. I'm just blanking.
But during that whole lockdown, that idea of just doing the autographs, what was happening is as we were getting them, we were getting having some correspondence with them. People like Adrian King and Kane and all that. So people were just starting to respond, writing little notes. They were getting a kick out of a 12-year-old at that time, being so interested in the movies. And that was kind of the idea that, hey, it sounds like we could actually reach these people to talk to them. So.
And also, Kane's documentary was what honestly got me fully into horror, because that was what caused me to watch Friday the 13th, and I got very invested in Friday the 13th, and I just got excited about all horror. I had already watched a lot of horror movies. Like before then, I'd already watched like The Cabin in the Woods, which for listeners is one of the posters in our background right now. And like I had already watched a bunch of horror movies. I was 12, and I had watched horror movies all my life, but that really got me into horror, and I was like, I like this. I like this genre.
Do you guys have a dream guest for your show?
Kane Hodder. Kane. Yeah, Kane.
The unicorn.
I was actually lucky to interview CJ Graham, who was Jason for Friday the 13th. for part 6, was it? I believe.
Was he? It's the one where he gets electrocuted. Is that?
Yeah, that's 6. That's 6. Right? Yeah, that's 6.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we'd like to talk to him too.
It would be cool. We talked. Speaking of the Friday the 13th, we talked with Derek Mears at a convention we recently went to, and we asked him to interview us. Very disappointing, but we get the reasons, but he said no. The way he phrased it was the product and Derek Mears, the person, would love to do it, but product Derek Mears can't do it and refuses.
We love Derek.
We love Derek.
He's wonderful. He's fantastic.
Nicest dude, and he's so tall.
But we'll never forgive him. No.
But we'll never forgive him.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He is fantastic. But yeah, it was a little disappointing, but his reasons were fine. So we're not judging it.
So we won't get all the Jasons.
Yeah, we won't get all
the
Jasons.
That'd be actually pretty cool if you could get them all on one show, right? Just have a Jason panel discussion.
That would be great.
That's right.
Oh, that would
have them arm wrestle and stuff.
See, you can have little contests. Who can swing the machete faster or something like that.
It might be Derek. That guy's.
It might be Derek. He's very strong and very tall.
Yeah, give me a watermelon and then just see who can chop through it the fastest.
Yeah.
Feats of strength.
Like the slasher and the watermelon.
Yeah.
Now, you guys said that I know you don't really listen to other podcasts because you're just kind of wrapped up in your own stuff. And that's cool. We get that a lot. It's okay. But and you said there was one YouTuber that you like, Dead Meat?
It's called the Dead Meat Podcast. The guy who hosts the show with his wife, Chelsea, is James A. Janice and Chelsea Rebecca. They just recently got married. But they also run a show called The Kill Count on their YouTube channel, Dead Meat, which is one of my favorite YouTube series. But yeah, I really enjoy them.
And I would say I don't really listen to too many podcasts. I've been listening to a lot of just random interviews versus stuck on one. But
okay,
I have to say, what is it? Talk Scary to Me.
Talk Scary to Me.
Harris is kind of a friend. I worked with her on Halloween too. We reconnected during that time with doing the autographs. And she and Scout Taylor Compton have a podcast that they do called Talk Scary to Me. They claim that I am not allowed to watch it until I'm older, which I am depressed. Yeah, it's pretty.
I'd like to watch it, but okay.
We'll call it candid. Everybody should listen to it. But yeah, so I hate to say it, but yeah, unfortunately, I'm a little hooked on that show. They do a good job.
But I'm not allowed to watch it, so I can't say I'm hooked on it.
You'll know why you're 18.
Okay, we have a portion of the show, and it is called Shameless Self-Promotion. And this is where you guys can let everybody know where they can get in touch with you and follow your show.
Shameless Self-Promotion.
We have an Instagram handle. Hold on, let me check what it's called. Actually,
it's What's Under the Bed.
What's Under the Bed with Dax. No spaces, no underscores. It's What's Under the Bed with Dax. Our YouTube is called just What's Under the Bed, but because YouTube's a jerk, it doesn't.
We love YouTube.
We love YouTube, but it doesn't fully advertise our show. If you just type What's Under the Bed, it shows up with a bunch of kids stuff like, whoa, let's see what's under my mom's bed and stuff like that. So you have to also write with spaces this time, What's Under the Bed with Dax, or just go to the Instagram. We have a link tree that has everything.
Okay.
Those are the two places right now. And
Dax is DAX. Yeah. What's Under the Bed?
DAX.
So we've been talking to Kai and Dax from What's Under the Bed. And you can see them on YouTube, and eventually we will hear them in audio form as well. But you can see their smiling faces there on YouTube in the meantime. Guys, thanks so much for coming to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Let's get back to the Sherpa. Sorry about that.
I'm sure you recognize this lovely melody as the theme to Sherpa Samples. And yes, this is when your Sherpa samples a bunch of podcasts. I take single episodes from a whole bunch of different podcasts, and sometimes I kind of lump them together in a theme, and I let you know what they're about. And this week I figured what we would do is talk about podcasts that have folks' names on them, because there are a lot of them out there. I'm sure that we will be covering more as the weeks go by with people's names in them, but here's some of the ones that I've been checking out. You know, some of them I'm probably not their intended target audience, but that's okay. I'm just letting you know what they are. If you've got a suggestion for a Sherpa sample, please let me know. Reach out to me on social media. Again, Sherpalution on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and say, hey, Sherpa, how about checking this one out? Or you can speak to me personally on the Wisdom app. There's a little information on that at the end of the show. Or you can even email me at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com and say, hey, listen to this show. And I will do it. I promise you, I will do it. And you can even get a mention on the show. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so enough with the preliminaries. Let's talk about some of the shows that I listen to. I should note that out of the 10 that I listened to, there were only 2 with women's names in the titles, but there are more, don't worry. And to make up for that, I decided that in our next segment with Sherpa Samples, it's going to be all women podcasts. And I listened to a bunch of really good ones that are definitely a wide spectrum of podcasts created by women. So I hope when that next episode comes around, you will be listening. So let's talk about the ones that I've checked out now. So we listened to On Purpose with Jay Shetty. Now, Jay Shetty is a life coach. I got to tell you a personal experience. I was listening to a life coach podcast a couple of years back, and it was this woman, and she never said the word you. And I'm thinking, well, if you're a life coach, shouldn't you be talking about you and not me? And everything was, I do this and I do that and I do this. And it really kind of turned me off of listening to podcasts by life coaches for quite some time. But I gotta say, my mind was changed listening to this podcast. It was very enjoyable. He's got a very pleasant voice. He's very straightforward and very honest. It was very enjoyable, actually. So he's very popular too. And I know that he has opportunities where you can even meditate with him if you want to. I think probably pay something to do that, or have some sort of subscription with him. But it definitely changed my mind about podcasts by life coaches. I can definitely tell you that. So if you're looking to, maybe look into things in your life, Jay Shetty might be the guy you want to listen to. And along that vein, we also had We Can Do Hard Things by Glennon Doyle. And Glennon is an author, and she created this podcast during the pandemic. That's where she got the title from, We Can Do Hard Things. And it's about getting on with your life and moving through the hard things. Really interesting show. That's basically what it's about. She's got a lot of different guests on her show, a lot of very different topics. Maybe if you feel sometimes you want to maybe hear someone's perspective on certain things in life, just give me a show to definitely check out. I listened to the Gary V Experience. Now, Gary V, you'll notice if you are a super fan that his name gets mentioned in a lot of my podcasts. My guests love him. People love him. He's very popular in the entrepreneurial field, and he's a really interesting guy. The episodes that I listened to was a radio show that he did where he basically talked about himself, and it was kind of cool kind of getting to know him and what he was all about. But if you're a struggling entrepreneur and you want that motivation, Gary V is the guy you want to talk to. I also listened to Against the Rules with Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis is also an author, and this podcast is about fairness, and he takes a different kind of look at fairness with each season. And listening to the episode that I heard, it kind of reminded me of This American Life. It was really cool. It was something about experts, and it's done in that kind of style. So if you're a fan of This American Life, which we have to talk about one of these days in Sherpa Samples, because it is a very popular and long-running podcast, I think you might like Against the Rules as well. Also listen to The Tim Dillon Show. Tim Dillon is a comedian. He talks a lot about pop culture and politics. So if that's the kind of stuff that you like, you can definitely check his show out. Listening, he kind of reminded me of Joe Rogan. I don't know why. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. He has that same kind of delivery, but it's not a copy of the Joe Rogan show. Just keep that in mind. But like I said, I'm not always the intended target audience. And while we're speaking about not the intended target audiences, you know I had to bring some of those up too, right? That's okay. I listened to the Ben Shapiro show and the Megyn Kelly show, and both of them are news figures. I really wouldn't call their podcasts news podcasts. They're more commentary, editorial type shows. And both of them really have kind of like a conservative leaning. So just keep that in mind if you're going to listen to them regularly. I respect any political views. I'm not a political person. So the one weird thing about listening to Ben Shapiro, it sounds like they sped his voice up. I don't know why. Maybe he just talks like that. I don't know. I've never met the man. But it just kind of sounds sped up. He's really got a interesting viewpoint. If you like that kind of viewpoint, that's fine too. Megyn Kelly, a similar viewpoint, but maybe not as extreme as Ben Shapiro's, I would say. I didn't realize that Ben Shapiro actually runs The Daily Wire, which is a news podcast that I listen to. And it's pretty good. They're always so polite to each other. They're overly polite, which I always found kind of weird, but it's like, hey, thanks for reporting that, Bob. Hey, thanks for having me, Steve. Well, stuff like that. Also, the Dan Le Batard show with Stugatz. I'm presuming that Dan Le Batard was a sportscaster who had a sports show, maybe an ESPN guy. I don't know. The episode that I listened to, and there are certain episodes on there that are very Miami centric. So if you live in the Miami area, this might be a podcast you'd like to check out because they do talk about Miami a lot. They're big on the Miami teams as well as a lot of sports and a lot of pop culture. He interviews a lot of sports people from what I can see. It's very local for me, which is kind of weird for a podcast that goes national. But hey, who doesn't like Miami, right? So way to go, Dan Le Batard. Also, the two others that I listened to that I really enjoyed were two gentlemen that are very popular. Both have very popular podcasts and have been around for a while. You've probably heard of them, but maybe not know what they do. The first one, WTF, maybe you might want to ask your kids what that stands for, with just like with Stugatz if you're not Italian. WTF with Mark Maron, comedian who's had a podcast for many years, and he's interviewed a whole bunch of people. I think there are well over 1,000 episodes. Again, you may or may not like his style. I listened to an interview that he had with Sam Elliott, and I really like Sam Elliott and his mustache too. The mustache probably gets a separate contract when he does movies. Fascinating stuff. I think I like the way that he asks questions. It's very casual. Keep in mind that the language may get a little strong sometimes, but I mean, that's his type of comedy as well, but an enjoyable show nonetheless. And finally, one that I really liked, and I can understand why it's so popular, it's the Tim Ferriss Show. And Tim talks to successful people about what makes them successful. And he speaks to all sorts of people, entertainers, business people, millionaires, whatever, just successful people. The interview that I caught was his interview with Stuart Copeland from a couple of years back. And I think that was from a TV show that he had at some point. And great interview. This is probably my favorite out of the 10 that I listened to. It's very straightforward questioning, enjoyable. The interview itself is really great if you want to look it up on your favorite podcast app, and I would highly recommend it. It was very entertaining, especially if you're a fan of the band The Police. And I think it's a great way to wrap up this edition of Sherpa Samples. Don't forget, the next time we're sampling, we're going to be talking the ladies. Let's move into the outro. A very special thanks to Dax and Kai for coming on by the Sherpa Chalet. Make sure you check out their YouTube show. And next week, we will be venturing for the first time in season 9 into the Sherpa screening room. We got it cleaned up for you. Don't worry. And we will be speaking to a lady named Christy Crandall. Christy is a former Army major who got into the film business. And when you hear the interview, you will see the connection that she's got to a previous podcast guest. And she was a pleasure to speak to. I think you will enjoy hearing what you got to hear. If you are so inclined to do the social media thing, follow me on social media at Sherpalution on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. I'm there. I'm all over the place. I know, I keep busy. And you can speak to me live on the Wisdom app, which is absolutely free, on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I am there in the dark. But we like to talk about podcasting and podcasts. So if you've got a podcast and you want to talk about it, great. If there are podcasts you're looking for recommendation, or you would like to recommend a podcast, kind of like you can do for Sherpa Samples, you can do so. I will be there. The app is absolutely free. Again, you can get it from either one of your favorite app stores, and it'll be great to hear from you. So thank you so much, folks, for coming on by. We'll see you next week in the Sherpa screening room. Mr. Bruce, I think we're going to have to hide under the covers for a while because there's a lot of scary talk on this show today. I'll get my teddy bear ready. But until then, folks, viva la Sherpalution, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Yell, come back now, you hear?